I'm Teresa.
And I'm Callista, and this is Terrifyingly Typical True Crime. We're continuing with our theme of daughters who kill, but today we're going to talk about a daughter who enlisted the help of her ex boyfriend and three other men to kill her mother and father.
Police and ambulance arrive at 238 Helen Avenue in the city of Markham, Ontario, Canada, around 11 p.m. on November 8th, 2010. Markham is a quiet city where the diverse population, many who have moved to Markham from other areas, felt safe due to its low crime rate. Police and ambulance immediately noticed a middle aged man moving across the lawn towards the street. He was visibly upset and in a lot of distress and was bleeding from his head. Paramedics immediately stabilized him and rushed him to the local hospital. Once at the hospital, doctors had to put the man, Wade Hann Pan, in a medically induced coma.
Back at the house, the police and other paramedics entered the home. Inside, they heard loud crying and noticed a young woman at the top of the stairs, tied with what looked like string to the banister. This was Jennifer Pan, the one who had called 911. The officers untied her and brought her outside. They asked her if anyone else was in the home, and she said that her mom, Bick, was in the basement. Officers made their way down to the basement, where they noticed a prone body covered with a blanket and blood seeping onto the floor around it. Paramedics checked for a pulse, but Bick was dead. The paramedics checked Jennifer for any injuries in the ambulance. She was upset, but there were no physical injuries. So the ambulance drove Jennifer to the police station where she could tell the investigators exactly what had happened that had left Bick dead and Han injured. To answer that, let's talk about who the Pans were.
Wei Han and Big Ha Pan were born and raised in Vietnam. They migrated to Toronto, Canada in the late 1970s and married in 1979. Jennifer was born in 1986 and her brother Felix was born in 1989. Both Han and Bick worked for Magna International, an auto parts manufacturer in nearby Aurora. Han was a machinist and Bick was a supervisor. Neighbors and friends described the Pan family as quiet and hardworking. Han and Bick didn't live lavishly, but with hard work were able to pay off their comfortable two-story home, have a sizable savings account, and they drove luxury cars, a Mercedes for Han and Lexus for Bick.
Much has been made of the Pans being tiger parents. I'm sure most of you have at least heard of this term. Tiger parenting is a form of strict parenting whereby parents are highly invested in ensuring their children's success. Tiger parents expect their children to have a high level of academic success and often push their children to be successful in extracurricular activities like music and sports. This term is often used exclusively for Asian parents. Like all things where we separate out a certain demographic, we don't think this is fair. Simply labeling Han and Bick as stereotypical immigrant Asian parents and Asian parents as the model minority who only raise academically successful kids isn't true. Not that we're negating the success of many Asian children who work incredibly hard, but I'm sure we have all known a kid who was pushed and pushed by their born and bred white middle class American parents to excel at a certain sport so they could obtain a college scholarship and then hopefully parlay that into a successful career.
Apparently, these parents missed the memo that says a very small percentage of students that are successful in, I don't know, say high school football are going to join the NFL in the future.
Exactly. Parents from all kinds of different backgrounds push their kids to have the lives they want for them, sometimes to everyone's detriment. Not that I'm in any way blaming Jennifer's parents here.
There is no argument that Han and Bick expected their children to be successful. They were proud of young Jennifer's accomplishments and even had a trophy case where they displayed her various awards. One of Jennifer's classmates, Nam Nguyen, indicated that at the high school they attended, straight A's were the norm and expected, and the only acceptable careers were doctor, pharmacist, lawyer, or engineer. Jennifer did well at elementary and middle school, but in high school she wasn't able to get the expected A's. School was more challenging, and getting straight A's proved difficult for Jennifer. She wasn't failing all her classes, but she was earning some B's. Jennifer knew that this just wasn't good enough. From a young age, her parents, especially her dad, had drilled into her the importance of academic excellence.
The expected straight A's are giving me flashbacks to my own school years. Of course, that was all self imposed. I was never berated for getting a B, but still, the horror over seeing one on my report card is a visceral memory.
I mean, education excellence and immense pressure on yourself to always succeed and go way above and beyond is definitely a hallmark of your personality.
Often to my detriment. Coming back to Jennifer, she started taking piano lessons at a young age. She continued these lessons into adulthood, and her piano teacher, Fernando Baldacini, said she was exceptional, the best of the best, and that her parents put a lot of money and effort into her success. Jennifer also took figure skating lessons from a young age with the expectation that she would eventually qualify for the Olympics. But this lofty dream shattered when she injured her knee and was no longer able to skate. And how devastating it must be to have your imagined future stuffed out in a single moment. This wasn't the only physical activity in which Jennifer took part, though. She also took martial arts and swimming lessons. Her parents would have agreed with Benjamin Franklin that idle hands are the devil's playthings. We're in no way minimizing the pressure Jennifer felt. Her parents controlled what she could do and had impossible expectations for her. She wasn't able to date because that would just get in the way of her studies. She also wasn't allowed to go to school dances or any parties. As we alluded to, she was also unable to choose the career she wanted. When she told her father she was interested in the field of kinesiology, sorry, which is the scientific study of human movement, function, and performance, he quashed this idea. And when Jennifer said she had a queasy stomach and couldn't be a doctor, he said she could be a pharmacist.
Again, I'm sure we have all heard of parents who force their children into careers and schools that they're not interested in. This is, of course, unfair, and I'm assuming you are setting up your relationship with your child in a way that they are going to resent you because they had no choice in the direction their life was going.
Definitely, but you don't deserve to be murdered for it.
Of course not. Jennifer wasn't the academically gifted students her parents demanded. I feel a lot of sympathy for Jennifer at this time in her life. She didn't have the type of relationship with her parents where she could go to them and say, I'm struggling with these classes. I need a tutor. I need to draw piano, something.
Yeah, I do feel bad for Jennifer at this stage. She's overwhelmed and desperate. Not a good combination.
Since she felt like she had no other option, she changed the unacceptable grades on her report cards so that it reflected that she received all A's. And because this is what her parents expected, they didn't question it. I'm not sure of the specifics of how she managed this. I remember in the dark ages, when I was in high school, they mailed the report cards to your home. So you couldn't make any changes. I mean, maybe they did that at her school too, and she just intercepted them and then gave them to her parents after she had manipulated them.
Yeah, I could see Jennifer rushing to the post box to get them before her parents got the chance. Although I swear I remember being handed some of my report cards to take home, so that would have made it all the easier to change them before presenting her improved grades to her parents.
True.
But her academic career had gone from bad to worse because Jennifer failed her calculus class and didn't graduate from high school. To us, it seems like the answer would be to retake the calculus class after getting some tutoring. Even if Jennifer didn't get an A, with a passing grade, she still would have graduated. But to Jennifer, that wasn't an option. She knew her grades weren't good enough to get into Ryerson University, now Toronto Metropolitan University. She didn't even have a high school diploma. Up until now, she had only falsified her report cards, nothing more permanent. But to meet her parents' expectations, she forged an acceptance letter from the university along with a student loan form by using Photoshop. Again, because this is what her parents expected, they didn't question the validity of these documents. Jennifer, in her quest to sell the lie that she was going to university, even bought some textbooks for courses she would have been taking, along with school supplies. Jennifer would leave her family home, take the city bus, and pretend to go to classes. She would hang out at cafes or the library, or go to her boyfriend, Daniel Wong's apartment. As time was nearing for graduation, she told her parents that there weren't enough tickets, so they wouldn't be able to go to the ceremony. On the one hand, all of this was eventually going to catch up to her, but on the other hand, I'm kind of impressed with the level of deceit.
I mean, she was definitely all in on doing whatever she deemed necessary to continue the facade, though that was going to end. I think she was just in the moment and it was just a continuation of the moment. She didn't think, what the hell? This is going to blow up in my face. But Ann and Bick were starting to get suspicious of Jennifer's activities, so they followed her and saw that instead of going to the university, she was going to the apartment of her on again, off again boyfriend, Danny Wong. This, rightly so, infuriated her parents. All the effort and expense they had put in so she would reach her, or really their, academic goals was gone. How could she have lied about everything? They severely restricted Jennifer's activities, saying she was no longer able to see Danny Wong. They thought that this relationship had ended years ago. Jennifer and Danny began dating while in high school. Her father became aware of this and told her to end the relationship. Jennifer didn't have time to date, and she didn't need any obstacles in her way when studying mattered over everything else. Danny worked at a pizza place and was also a small time drug dealer. Her dad told her he wasn't successful and wouldn't be able to support her or a family. There would be no future with him. Han later said, quote, I was very upset because all our effort was to help her attend school and she was not, end quote. He also said, quote, I told her to cease this relationship with Danny Wong or wait until I'm dead.
Strong statement right there, but I can see where they're coming from given Danny's drug dealing habit. By the time of the home invasion on November 8th, 2010, Jennifer and Danny were currently just friends. Danny actually had a different girlfriend, but he still cared for Jennifer and knew that she had strict parents who made her life difficult. Jennifer, for her part, had never stopped wanting them to be together. She began to think how much better her life would be without her parents. She would no longer be a prisoner in her house. She would be able to do what she wanted. She would inherit her parents' assets. And maybe, just maybe, with her parents out of the way, she delusionally thought she could get Denny back. So Jennifer asked Danny to help her murder her parents. Danny gave Jennifer the name of Homeboy, who was going to charge Jennifer $10,000 to kill her parents. His normal rate was $20,000, but being a stand up guy, he was going to give her the friends and family rate since she was a friend of Danny's. We're back to the police station and the night of the murders. Investigator Randy Slate asked Jennifer what happened. Jennifer said she was in her bedroom, talking and texting on her phone. Her dad was in bed, having decided on turning in early, and her mom was downstairs, soaking her feet because she had just gotten home from line dancing.
I kind of love the fact that after working all day to let off some steam and do something she actually enjoyed, she went line dancing.
That is kind of great.
Jennifer heard voices downstairs. She heard her mom yelling for her dad, and she heard other unfamiliar voices. She opened her bedroom door to see what was going on, and a man was standing there. He grabbed her by the arm and asked her where the money was. He led her into her parents' bedroom, but became angry when he didn't find what he wanted. He had her put her hands behind her back, where he tied her wrists together and then had her sit down and tied her upper arms to the banister. He then went down to the basement where the other intruders had brought both of her parents. Jennifer heard crying and pleading from her parents and three distinct voices. There were three men. She heard two of the men ask where the money was, and they then became frustrated, and she heard two loud pops. She then heard two more loud pops. She heard the men come up the stairs. She saw each of them as they rushed out the front door. She heard her father moaning. She waited a few minutes to make sure the intruders didn't come back into the house. She then, miracles of miracles, was able to move her hands and grab her phone because the intruders did not pat her down, and she called 911. She didn't put the phone on speaker, but turned the volume up. I don't think this is how phones work. If you have the volume up and the phone is on the floor next to you, but not on speaker, how are you going to be able to hear the person you are calling?
Unless they yell when they talk, as some feel the need to do.
I mean, that's true.
Much has been speculated about this call, and investigators have said that it sounds like she put the phone up to her ear, further indicating that she either tied her own hands with strings so they were exceptionally loose, or the phone was in front of her and easily accessible the entire time. She does sound upset, and you can hear her father moaning in the background. She played up her role as the dutiful daughter who had just experienced a horrific home invasion, telling her father, I'm okay, I'm okay. We have linked the 911 call if that is your jam and you would like to hear what a witness to a horrific crime who has been left not blindfolded and uninjured sounds like. Investigator Slate asked Jennifer if she knew anyone that would want to hurt her family. Did she know if her parents were involved in anything illegal? Did her parents have a dispute or falling out with anyone? Did they have a lot of money? She answered no to all of these questions. He also asked Jennifer what the intruders looked like. Jennifer replied that all three men were black. One had dreadlocks, the second intruder wore a hoodie and was thin, and the third assailant had a distinctive Jamaican accent. Finally, the investigator asked how the intruders were able to get into the home. Did she recall hearing knocking? Did her mother let them in? Jennifer replied that she had no idea how these murderous men were able to get into her home. After all, she was upstairs in her bedroom.
While Slate was interviewing Jennifer, other officers, Detective Bill Cordis and Detective Alan Cook, were looking for evidence at the Pan home. They carefully looked at the front door through which the intruders entered. There were no marks of any kind on the door and absolutely no sign of forced entry. Investigators also noted that it looked like Jennifer had been tied to the banister with some type of thin string. They further noted that there were a lot of valuables still in the house: a wallet with cash, a watch, and some other jewelry, and an expensive looking camera. Generally, in a home invasion, assailants grab anything that they think they can sell for a quick profit. They also question why the intruders didn't take one of the Pan's luxury vehicles, at least for a joyride, before dumping it, if the whole point of the crime was to get some quick cash or valuables.
Field Detective David McDonald started canvassing in and around the Pounds neighborhood. As we previously mentioned, Markham was a safe suburb with few incidents of violent crime. Detective McDonald talked to neighbors who had nothing negative to say about the Pans. They hadn't noticed any questionable activity in or around the Pans home in the days leading up to the home invasion either. But the detective had paid dirt when he spoke to the neighbors who lived across from the Pans. It just so happened that they had a security camera. Investigators reviewed the camera, and although the images were grainy, it was clear that three individuals entered Pan's home on November 8th, 2010. They had simply opened the door and walked right in.
Danny Wong's name came up during the first few days of the investigation. Police noted that he had been in trouble for drug trafficking and possession. Could he have something to do with the Pans being targeted? Danny Wong was brought in for an interview. He acknowledged that he and Jennifer had previously been in a relationship for years, on and off. They had been off for a while and he had a new girlfriend. He stated that he and Jennifer wanted to stay together, but her dad did not approve of their relationship. He acknowledged that he and Jennifer were still in contact with each other and would call and text each other periodically. One of the reasons they were still in contact with each other is that they had both been receiving harassing texts, hundreds of them, in the last few months. They would say things like, I'm watching you, or bang, bang, haha. Investigators asked Danny if he thought his drug activities could have anything to do with the Pans being targeted and shot. He didn't think any of his activities had anything to do with the crime.
When Jennifer was brought in for a second interview, and you can watch these interviews online or snippets of the interview in Netflix's documentary, What Jennifer Did, she seemed nervous and confused as to why she was being interviewed again. Jennifer even told the officer that she was nervous.
I'm not sure how she thought this would help her. Maybe they would recognize she's nervous, and why would she be nervous and tell her, no, we don't need to interview you. You can go home now. But the officer, and I kind of love this, says, quote, the truth is always the best way to alleviate anxiety, end quote. And not if you're guilty, officer. Will the truth set her free too?
Well, that's what he needs her to think. And she's played the dutiful daughter up until now, so I'm sure part of her hoped that role would see her sent back home as a victim. When the officer asked her about Danny Wong, Jennifer said they dated on and off for 6 years, despite the fact she was never supposed to have a boyfriend. Her parents, after all, had told her she couldn't date because it would get in the way of her schoolwork and extracurricular activities. Jennifer acknowledged that she and Danny were no longer together and that he had moved on. She also mentioned that his girlfriend had sent her text telling her to back off. And I'd be curious for your opinion, but based on Danny's role and continued contact with Jennifer, part of me thinks that he, like Jennifer, wanted to be with her in spite of having a new girlfriend, even if part of the reason they were still in contact was the text. To me, that just doesn't feel like the whole story.
Yeah, I do think he still cared for Jennifer, and her parents' disapproval was just too much. Things couldn't work out, but I do believe he still wanted to be with her.
Yeah.
The officer then asked Jennifer about her relationship with her parents. Jennifer acknowledged that her parents were disappointed in her. She told the officers about creating fake documents regarding grades, transcripts, student loans, and even a fake diploma to keep the lie going that she was at university. She admitted that she tried to tell her parents several times before they found out about her lies, but she just couldn't. They would be so disappointed. They had such high expectations of her. But they did find out. Jennifer said that after her parents uncovered the truth, they no longer trusted her and she was basically at home all the time. If she did go anywhere, they would drive her. I just can't imagine how miserable this was for Jennifer and her parents. Her brother Felix wasn't living at home and was away at university.
Which I'm sure he was grateful for. I know I would have been glad to have been out of that environment.
Too true. What was the resolution to the situation? Were Han and Bick thinking of forcing Jennifer to get her GED and then reapply to university? Did they hide the fact that their 24-year-old daughter was living at home with no plans for her future? Or did they perpetuate the lie to those who asked and just said that, she was having a hard time finding a job? And what about Jennifer? After her carefully constructed lies fell apart and she wasn't allowed to leave the house, what was her plan? Once her parents found out about her lies, did she immediately start thinking the situation was untenable and began planning her parents' murders?
To find out the answers to these questions, the officer then switched gears and asked Jennifer about the home invasion. In the video, you can tell that Jennifer is uncomfortable. She is looking down and keeps putting her hand on her stomach. I mean, I would have been feeling sick with nerves too. The officer then asked Jennifer to demonstrate how she was able to make the 911 call. He had her stand up, take her jacket off, put her phone in her waistband, and put her hands behind her back with her wrists together. She was able to reach the phone, take it out, and hold it to her right side. She then turned her head to look at the phone and dialed. While she was able to accomplish all this, honestly, it looked rather suspect. The officer must have also thought so because he told her she could sit down. He asked her why she thought the intruders didn't kill her, since it's rare that criminals leave a witness to their crimes to identify them in the future. She said it was because she cooperated, which I guess means she willingly allowed one of the assailants to bind her hands and didn't start screaming. But didn't her parents also cooperate? With no satisfactory answer to this, he then asked her if she had anything to do with the attacks on her parents. She vehemently said no, but her nerves now saw her constantly playing with her hair. Officers were skeptical, but they didn't have enough evidence to arrest her. They had to let Jennifer go home.
5 days after the murder and attempted murder, Han was taken out of his coma. He recounted to officers what happened on the evening of November 8th. He had been asleep when he was woken up by a man with a gun standing over him. The man led him downstairs and had him sit in a chair opposite his wife, Vic, who was begging for her life. The intruders kept asking for money. One of the men hit Han in the head several times with a gun. Han looked up the stairs and saw Jennifer talking with one of the men. She was not bound, and they were having a casual conversation. The three men then led Han and Bick to the basement. Bick continued to plead with the men to spare her life. They weren't moved by her pleas. Heartbreakingly, it was revealed that Bick's last words to her murderers were, "Don't hurt my daughter." The investigator was now sure Jennifer was involved, so he posted guards outside Han's hospital room.
It's just tragic to think of Beck in her last moments because why would she assume her daughter, who had previously lied, sure, but had never been violent, was behind the whole thing?
I mean, Jennifer's actions up to this point were dishonest, but like you said, she hadn't been violent. I'm glad that Vic didn't realize before she was murdered that it was all Jennifer's doing.
Yeah. And kudos to Anne for reliving that trauma to tell the truth. That must have been unbelievably painful.
Yet, knowing that your daughter was involved in trying to have you murdered and by some sliver of luck you survived, I really feel for him.
Me too. Eager to catch Jennifer out, 2 weeks after the home invasion, Jennifer was brought to the police station for her third and final interview, led by Bill Gates, who is a purported expert in truth verification. Basically, he is trained to be a human lie detector. The renowned Gates started his interview by bringing up piano lessons. He said he took lessons when he was a kid, but wasn't very good. I guess he assumed that by finding a common interest, Jennifer would tell him the truth of what happened, which is a fair assumption since many officers have gotten a confession once they've established a rapport with the suspect. After Jennifer told him she started lessons at age 4, he moved on to sympathizing with Jennifer and the fact that her parents expected a lot from her. He told her that it must have been hard to live up to those expectations. And Jennifer opened up, sharing all the lies that she fed her parents, and how after they found out, she basically became a prisoner in her own home. She knew she had disappointed them and also felt that she wasn't good enough. Her friends were moving on with school and jobs, and she felt left behind. She admitted that when things got really bad, she would cut herself. Again, sympathy for Jennifer at this point.
Yeah, definitely. Gates then told Jennifer that there are satellites in the sky that are able to view houses kind of like an X-ray, and that these satellites record what they see, and they can see if people are where they say they are in a house at a certain time. Obviously, this is bullshit. There is no special satellite that records everybody's whereabouts in their homes. I mean, this was 2010. Who knows? Maybe in the next few years we will get to this point. I hope the hell not. This is a good time to mention that in Canada, the police are allowed to lie to a suspect. What do you think about this line of interrogation?
At first, I was like, how was Jennifer buying this? But I assume she was panicking and not thinking clearly. Also, I'm not surprised police can lie in Canada because they can do the same in the US, which really seems like entrapment and arrest people for false confessions. I'm a big fan of it being made illegal in the States as it is in places like England, but I don't see that happening in the near future.
I think it's a slippery slope. We need to catch the bad guys, obviously, but there needs to be some kind of guideline on how far we can bend the truth to get the suspect to tell the truth or confess.
Exactly.
Gates then said, "Your dad wasn't supposed to be a witness. He wasn't supposed to survive." He said, "We know you were involved. Tell me what happened." Jennifer put her head down and started to cry. She then said, "They were only supposed to take me." She said she didn't want to live anymore because she was such a disappointment. She claimed that she was going to pay Homeboy $2,000 to kill her. Gates, of course, didn't buy this. There were too many holes in this theory to count. Why would three men invade her house to kill her? And how did things go so sideways that they shot both her parents but left her tied to the banister? It's a bad lie, and it doesn't make any sense.
No sense whatsoever what they managed to kill her mother and injure her father, but decided to just tie Jennifer up, the intended victim.
Yeah, it just really is obviously untrue.
Obviously. Not having just fallen off the turnip truck, detectives looked at Jennifer's phone records and saw the texts and phone calls she had with the intruders prior to and on the night of the murder. She received text from Homeboy saying, VIP access. Jennifer said this meant that she needed to unlock the front door, which is exactly what she did. She unlocked the front door, then went back upstairs to her bedroom and flipped the light on and off several times, which apparently was the signal for go time. The three assailants, Homeboy, whose real name is Lenford Crawford, Eric Sean Carty, and David Melvaganam, entered the home. After this incriminating interview, Jennifer was arrested. Lenford, Eric, David, and Danny were all arrested in early 2011. Detective Deborah Gladding, who was the victim liaison officer assigned to Jennifer, was shocked by her arrest. She had felt a lot of sympathy for Jennifer and couldn't believe this turn of events. However, after her arrest, investigators found Jennifer's diary, in which she, unsurprisingly, talked about how strict her parents were and how they didn't want her to date. The rest of the diary was filled with her thoughts about and feelings for Danny.
Officers determined that all the threatening texts that Danny had received and that Jennifer said she too had received were all sent by Jennifer. It was also discovered that this was not the first attempt on her parents' life. About 10 months before the murder and attempted murder, Jennifer had hired a friend to kill her parents, but they changed their mind and said they couldn't do it.
It's good that the friend didn't go through with it, but I'm not loving the fact that they originally agreed to it.
I mean, good point. Maybe he thought he was going to get the money up front. And then
That's true.
the trial began in March 2014 and lasted approximately 10 months. Jennifer and her accomplices were charged with first degree murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit murder. All defendants pleaded not guilty. Jennifer Pan was found guilty of both first degree murder and attempted murder for her role in the 2010 incident that left her mother Bick dead and her father Han critically injured with a head wound. Her co-accused, Linford Crawford, David Melvanunem, I've said it differently than you, and Daniel Wong were also found guilty of the same charge. Eric Carty's attorney became ill during the trial, causing it to end in a mistrial. He ended up pleading guilty to conspiracy to commit murder in December 2015 and received an 18-year sentence with a chance of parole after 9 years. However, he died in a fatal stabbing while in prison in 2018.
Han Pan wasn't in the courtroom during the sentencing phase of the case, but he did provide a witness statement in which he stated, quote, "When I lost my wife, I lost my daughter at the same time. I hope my daughter Jennifer thinks about what happened to her family and can become a good, honest person someday." End quote. Han was granted a lifetime non-contact order with Jennifer. I think his statement pretty much sums it up, and I'm 100% with him in his decision. If Jennifer was my daughter, I don't think I could summon up the will to see her again. I mean, did she even express remorse?
Not in any of the research that I found.
Jennifer, Lenford, David, and Danny all received a life sentence on the first degree murder charge with no chance of parole for 25 years. On the attempted murder charge, all four received a life sentence. All four defendants appealed, and the Court of Appeals for Ontario ordered a retrial on the first degree murder charge. The court found that the judge in the original trial did not present the jury with all the possible convictions, including manslaughter and second degree murder. The attempted murder charge, which also carries a life sentence, stands, and thank God for that. But prosecutors in the case filed their own appeal to Canada's Supreme Court, which still has to decide if it will hear the case. If Canada's Supreme Court elects not to, prosecutors must decide if they want to hold a new trial, and if a new trial isn't held, then all four defendants can seek parole on the attempted murder charge. So I guess fingers crossed that the case isn't retried and poor Han doesn't have to relive it all again. Although I would think Jennifer and her accomplices getting out on parole doesn't fill him with joy either, but at least they'll be monitored.
Yeah. This case attracted international attention. How could a studious 24-year-old daughter from a good, hardworking family have had any involvement in such a horrific crime? Jennifer would later state that the extreme pressure her parents subjected her to caused her to have a mental breakdown and led to her planning their murders. As for the rest of the family, Felix Pan went on to graduate from university and worked for a time in the tech industry on the east coast of Canada. He is reported to have moved back to the Toronto area. He did testify in court and was also granted a lifetime non contact order with Jennifer.
Good on Felix. I hope that the lack of contact has allowed him to somewhat move on with his life. Not that you can ever really get over your sister trying to murder both your parents.
Yeah, I hope he lives a quiet life.
Yeah.
And Pan has tried several times to sell his home where the crime took place, but because of its history, he has been unable to. As of April 2024, Mr. Pan is still alive and living in the Toronto area. He is unable to work due to injuries he suffered on the night of the attack.
Again, poor Han. I get why no one wants to buy the house, but not to be overly morbid, haven't most old homes witnessed a death, even if it might not have been a murder?
I mean, most likely, but someone dying of, natural causes versus someone being murdered probably matters to most potential buyers.
I can see that, I guess. In my opinion, Jennifer's is a really interesting case because, on the one hand, like Virginia, she painted herself into a corner with her lies. But on the other hand, like the many girls we've seen who enlist the help of their boyfriend, she still loved Danny and wanted to be with him again. And I don't believe those two motives are exclusive.
It's a good point. I think this case got a lot of attention because of the tiger parenting aspect and was another way for people to either sympathize, thinking those parents did everything for her and just wanted her to succeed, to have a more successful life than they did. Or on the flip side, people could be judging and say, see, look what happens when you pressure your kids.
Hmm.
Lying for years and years, and then just realizing with the actions that she had taken, she had made her life so small. She didn't see a lot of options. In some of the other cases, like Suzanne or Jasmine's, I think it was easy for the media and the public to blame the boyfriends. I mean, we don't think this way. Listen to the episodes to get our take. But in Jennifer's case, even though some media tried to point out Danny's drug connections, the fault clearly lay at Jennifer's feet.
It's true. And I think it's more difficult to conceive of a young woman killing her parents than a young man. So, of course, the media ran with it. We are going to end the episode there. Next week, we'll be finishing our series on Daughters Who Kill with the case of Lizzie Borden. All the sources we used for this episode are in the show notes below. If you'd like to suggest a case or theme for us to discuss, feel free to email us at terrifyinglytypicalpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us at Terrifyingly Typical Podcast on Instagram and at Terrifyingly Typical Pod on TikTok. Leave us a comment below to let us know what you thought of the case. We'd love to hear your opinions.
See you next week.